Please listen carefully.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 6th episode of the Study Space podcast created by the Uniplan team. My name is David.
And my name is Julian.
And we'll be your hosts for today. Today we'll be discussing how to stay energized in college and how to avoid falling into a cycle of perpetual fatigue. But before we start, I have to ask, Julian, what's inspiring you today?
What is inspiring me today has to do with NASA. Big surprise, right? Because NASA is super inspiring in general. But for me specifically, what's inspiring me today is the fact that my mentor at NASA decided today of all days to endorse me in a bunch of skills on LinkedIn. I think he endorsed me in general programming. He endorsed me in C++. He endorsed me in Java. And then he also wrote like a LinkedIn recommendation, which is like a small like endorsement, or like I guess it's like a one paragraph recommendation letter that is posted on your LinkedIn. And then the cool thing is that it also asks for the relation between myself and my mentor. So in my mentor's case, my mentor directly managed me. And so his endorsement will mean a lot when recruiters or, other professionals, or, since I'm doing consulting, if clients look at that and they see like, oh, this person directly managed this other individual and they received an endorsement that's like pretty well worded. So it speaks highly of me, speaks highly of my skills, and that's always a good thing in my book. So that is what is inspiring me today. That is receiving endorsements and recommendations from your direct managers.
Well, that's really interesting. It's kind of funny, coincidental actually. My lab partner for physics endorsed me for a bunch of skills the other day too, because he happened to bump into me on LinkedIn, and he started endorsing me on everything that possibly had to do with physics lab. So data analysis, Microsoft Excel, a bunch of this stuff. It was pretty funny. Anyway, what's inspiring me today is steak, which sounds kind of weird at first, but as you guys may know, Thanksgiving was just occurred recently. And over that week, my school, Hopkins, was closed. So there was actually no food to eat. So I had to go and cook on my own. So what I did was I bought 6 ribeye steaks from the local supermarket, and I decided to learn that week how to cook a ribeye steak. And I had never cooked before, so it was quite difficult. But I managed with the help of YouTube, lots of online resources, lots of Gordon Ramsay. I managed to learn how to make a pretty decent steak, nice medium rare, just the way I like it. And I've been eating it for basically the whole week. I just finished my last one today, so I'm going to be going back to dining hall food, which I don't think I'll be happy about, but it is what it is.
So would you say it was uncomfortable for you to start cooking when you hadn't cooked before?
Oh yeah, everything about it. Obviously, you guys know, like, the heat of the kitchen is awful. I was burning myself the first time because the oil was splashing everywhere, and I was just scared of the heat. I was scared of flipping things over, and I was scared that I wasn't handling the meat right, seasoning right, stuff like that. So many things could have gone wrong. And yeah, it's just, I think the first time being in the kitchen is a little tough, but after that, you kind of get used to it, and it becomes really fun, actually. Cooking is kind of a good de-stressor for me. I don't know about you, Julian, but...
Oh yeah, I totally resonate with that. Cooking for me is a therapeutic activity. I started cooking, I don't know if I can put like a hard date on when I started cooking. My dad showed me how to make scrambled eggs when I was a small kid. And like as a small kid, like my definition of good scrambled eggs was like crap. It was like rubbery, way overcooked eggs that weren't properly scrambled. Like you can see the whites still in the egg, which is a sign of an improperly scrambled egg, by the way. But I guess when I started seriously cooking was in High school? Maybe late middle school, like eighth grade, but definitely in high school. And then I've just been adding to my repertoire of recipes up until now. And I feel, I would say, pretty comfortable in the kitchen, so much so that cooking is a relaxing activity that I look forward to when I get home from work. I think one valuable lesson to learn from your story is that you stepped out of your comfort zone, right? And then the best thing about stepping out of your comfort zone, especially with cooking, is you get to reap the rewards immediately after you're done. That is, you get to eat, right? So that's the best thing.
Right. Yep. It's amazing.
And I think the important thing to get from cooking is the practice and to be able to, let's see, to sort of understand what ingredients add certain flavors. Like different spices, different ingredients will lend a different flavor to the overall dish. And a good way to practice that, I find, is if you follow a recipe to the letter the first time, and then the second time or the subsequent times that you make it, you change the recipe in a certain way. So you always have like a baseline about where the dish should be, like how the dish should taste in general, like as a baseline. And then you change it to your own liking every other time that you make it again. And that's how you sort of slowly but surely develop your palate, and you sort of understand which ingredients lend which flavors in a dish. So that's my advice for cooking.
Yeah, that is the beauty of cooking. So now let's go ahead and start the podcast. So as I mentioned before, the topic today is going to be staying energized, right? And so I guess we have to start first with the problem, right? There is a really, really difficult problem that's associated with staying energized. And I think that problem is it's hard to maintain energy, right? Because it's very easy to fall into a perpetual cycle of fatigue. And let me describe it this way. So let's say, you're about to go to lecture, but you didn't get enough sleep last night, right? Let's say you were staying up playing video games. So instead of going to lecture, you decide, oh, I'm just going to take another hour of sleep, not go to lecture for today. I'll catch up eventually. And then later that night, you're going to be trying to catch up, and then you have more stuff that's piled on you. And plus you have to catch up on more stuff. And then that leads to you skipping lecture next day, right? It's a perpetual cycle. And falling behind on one thing leads to falling behind on everything else pretty much, especially if you have a very volatile schedule where you don't really have any free time, and every minute of your day is packed with some sort of activity or something that you need to get done, right? And so it makes it impossible to kind of catch up eventually if you let it go on for too long. Have you ever experienced that personally before, Julian?
Yeah, I'd be lying to say that. I'd be lying if I said I have never experienced, falling behind once, and then it just sort of as like, a snowball rolling down a hill. The fatigue and falling behind just grows and grows and grows until it's like, okay, well, GG, I can't really get out of this rut that I've, gotten myself into. And that was definitely the case in, I want to say, high school. Definitely in high school, definitely in middle school. Like, oh boy, like the further you go back in my education, the earlier you go, the more you realize I was actually quite a bad student. And then I like the switch for me flipped somewhere between middle school and high school, where I decided like, okay, maybe it's time to like convert to a good student. But yeah, I was a pretty bad student as a kid, and definitely fell behind. Let's see, concrete example, high school English honors. I had this old English teacher, you know him, David, because you had him too. I had this English teacher, and he had never taught a freshman class in like decades. Like this guy has been teaching for a long time, and he had historically taught seniors exclusively, or at least like upperclassmen exclusively in high school. So this was the first year in like I guess 2 decades or 3 decades that he's been teaching where he was required to teach freshmen. That's what he told us, at least. And so he didn't quite know how to teach freshmen, especially when it's like like a low level English course, because he was traditionally trained in like teaching advanced English literature and such. And he taught AP English literature at my high school, in addition to teaching the seniors English as well. So he was like, I'm not really sure how to teach freshmen, but you guys are an honors course, right? He would always ask that question every single day when he came in. He's like, you guys are an honors course, right? You guys can probably do this. And then he would give us an essay prompt nearly every single day just to write in class, but it wasn't due at the end of class. It was just like, here's an essay, do it. And if you don't finish it, then like do it at home. And he would take that time where we would sit there and presumably write our essays to grade the senior papers instead of, putting in a great deal of effort and time into teaching the freshman class. Now, that's not to say that he did that every single day. There were days, a great many days, where we were taught, English literature and such. And he also talked a lot about college and the college application process, which really helped me in applying to college, but that's another story. But anyway, back to the point. He assigned a lot of essays, and his system was all of the essays that I assigned over the course of the semester are due at the end of the semester in one big packet. And your grade is determined by how much of that big packet that you complete. And so since they weren't ever due at the end of the class day, I would just not finish it. And then the next day comes and there's another essay to do, and I don't do that one. And then it just sort of gets worse and worse and worse until it's like, last week of the semester. And he's like, okay, guys, essay packets are due next week. Make sure you have all of your essays done. And I'm like, oh boy. So I have to go in and I had to write like 20 or 30 essays in a week just to finish the packet. And it was so bad, and I regretted it so much. And then I promptly repeated the same mistake in this next semester. So yeah, it's definitely reality. I've faced it before. It's not fun.
Yeah, I think I went through something very similar in high school. So basically what happened in Calculus BC, it was a little different than Calculus AB because he expected us to be more mature, to be able to be more responsible. So instead of having us turn in homework like every 1 or 2 days, he basically gave us the entire month to do like a bunch of homework assignments. And at first I was pretty good with it, but then I started slacking because I realized, it's fine. I can do this eventually. And then what ended up happening was during the last week, I had to finish like 4 or 5 homework assignments. And then I realized, oh shoot, I don't even know how to do any of this because I haven't been really paying attention because I haven't been doing the homework. So I haven't been keeping track of what I've been doing wrong, what I haven't been learning and stuff like that. So it's very easy to fall into that cycle. And this wasn't like as a freshman or anything. Like I had definitely made mistakes like this before, but I didn't learn. And I think that experience kind of taught me, like that was kind of like the final straw. Like, oh, you gotta get your act together before you don't get all this homework in and you get an F on your homework. So yeah, it's definitely a huge problem. I think it gets, I don't know if you would agree with me on this, but I think it gets worse in college for a lot of people because college professors have that kind of mentality of, oh, have this done by the end of the month or the end of the week, rather than we're going to keep track of you every single day and hold you accountable. We're going to expect you to be responsible. And that leads to a lot of students being irresponsible.
So that definitely happens in university. I've seen it happen a lot. There are a select few professors who are like very fully dedicated to teaching their courses, and so they'll stay on top of the grading and collecting of homework and such. But the point of universities, especially in like research universities, is the professors are there to do research and to publish and to create new knowledge and, you know, be at the bleeding edge of their field. So a lot of them aren't focused necessarily on teaching and, you know, collecting homework and such. And there are TAs for that, which help them. But again, they're mainly focused on research and doing their own work. And so they aren't super dedicated to, you know, homework and assignments and those kind of menial tasks. Now, in math, notoriously at my school, I don't know if I think you have this too, maybe another form of it, but in my calculus courses and my linear algebra course, I had this thing called, oh gosh, what was it called? David, do you have online homework? I forget what it's called now.
Web work?
No. WebAssign.
WebAssign, yep.
Yeah. So WebAssign. WebAssign is online math homework, and the professor has the power to like schedule it as to like when it's due and such. And my professor usually made it due the week after it's assigned. So she assigned homework, I think either every class day or every other class day. But you can see how dangerous this gets, right? Even on like a micro scale, like every single week, the homework assignment due next week, that was the system. So if the assignment was assigned on Monday, it was due the next Monday. And since class met every single day, and sometimes she would assign homework every single day, it would be like Monday, due next Monday, Tuesday, due next Tuesday, Wednesday, so on and so forth, right? And if you don't do them, and you just get into like an endless cycle of like, oh crap, I got to do homework from last week as well as next week, you know? So that gets really, really dangerous really, really fast. But since the homework is online, it's also graded immediately, and like there was like a hard deadline on it. And so that made things a little tough. Let's see, in the lower division courses in computer science, at least, homework was due in a similar manner. It was like either due a week or two after it was assigned. And I'm trying to think of when like homework was due like consistently every single day. You know what? Online courses at my university, they had like every single day you needed to like put in a discussion post. Like a forum post or like a...
Oh, yeah. I've heard of those.
Yeah, so I got to put in like a discussion post like, oh, like today I read this and this was super interesting and really fascinating and I learned a great deal from this chapter, kind of a you know, thing. Like you got to BS your way through it, because there's no way you're going to be fascinated by a new topic every single day reading from the same book, right? So that was due every single day, and that was pretty tough. But I mean, it gets the ball of the snowball that rolls down the hill grows very fast in college. So it's very easy, very, very easy, dangerously easy to underestimate exactly how much time and how much effort you need to put in for one homework assignment. And if you let it slip, then it becomes so much worse. So much worse. Oh my gosh. Like I had to turn in a big packet of like homework that I just didn't do it like in the moment. And it was really tough, especially with calculus, where like the problems are never just like one problem. One problem has like 10 sub problems. And that's never fun to do, especially when you have like 20 of those to get through.
Yeah, most definitely. There are a lot of severe problems that come with a lack of energy. I know just last week, what happened was I got sick, so it wasn't really something I could control. So I decided to take a day off for myself. And that caused a lot of problems because I missed an entire school day. That meant I missed about 3 lectures. And those lectures were quite important. They were teaching really, really important concepts in Calculus 3, in electrical engineering, and in my expository writing course too. We were going over some pretty important content that was going to go into our essay. So luckily, the week after, which was last week, was Thanksgiving break. And so I managed to be able to catch up on that kind of stuff. But had I not had that week, it's very possible that I wouldn't have finished my essay, that I wouldn't have completed my problem set because I didn't really know what to do since I missed a lecture, and that I potentially couldn't have done my electrical engineering homework either. And so a lot of times we get, kind of stuck into that, not by our own choices, just by circumstances that happen around us. And that causes a lot of severe problems, I have to say. And a lot of the times we use bandages. I like to call them bandages because they're like short-term solutions. They're, we like to use bandages to fix wounds, right? But that clearly doesn't work because a bandage is never big enough to fix a wound. So what we do is, sometimes we'll pull all-nighters, right? We'll use Red Bull and caffeine, pour a few coffees and just say, I'm just going to catch up all in one night and get everything done with so that, now I can go back on my normal pace, which usually doesn't work because a lot of the times you won't be able to catch up all in one night and things can go wrong. You might lower quality of work, right? It's very possible that you'll just turn in a half completed homework assignment, or you'll turn in an essay that the professor can tell you clearly wrote in 1 or 2 hours. Some people will copy and cheat, which, in the short run, it doesn't really matter, right? Because you got the homework done with, whatever. But then in the long run, it actually affects you because what happens is on the final, on the midterm, maybe if you're in high school on the test, you're not going to understand the material, and then you're going to have to spend a lot more time trying to learn that, and that causes a great deal of problems. So bandages are obviously not the right way to go about fixing these type of problems. So what you should do is you have to find a long-term solution. This makes your life easier. It makes sure that you're on track, and I guess it keeps you in shape and it keeps you on track because rather than letting yourself slip into this snowball of problems, into fatigue and into a cycle where you cannot manage your energy properly, you'll be able to manage everything properly and get everything done. So I guess the first point to note here is to get a routine. Now, I guess, Julian, have you ever had a routine before?
Oh yeah, I'm a creature of habit. I am a creature of routine. Routine is comfortable. Routine is predictable, and it is by nature repeated and repeatable. And it takes a lot of thinking out of your day, which might sound like a bad thing, but it actually is a good thing, and I'll explain why a little later. But yeah, I have a routine. My daily routine. Let's see. I guess the more valuable thing is my routine in university, right? Because I'm working now, so I'm not really
Right, definitely.
a student. I'll be a student in January. So I'll have things to say, more currently then. But I'll speak to my habits and routine in university. Let's see. So typical routine. I'm gonna start at night because that seems to be where I know a lot of students struggle is the night. So I always went to sleep before. So my hard stop is midnight. Like I must be in bed. I must be asleep by midnight because my personal goal, I guess, is to get at least 6 hours of sleep every single night, and I still stick to that to this day, by the way. But that was certainly a very good habit that I had. So always at least minimum 6 hours of sleep, and I got up at 6 a.m. So that means I need to be in bed asleep by midnight. However, I most of the time got into bed and asleep before 11. On average, like 10:30, I'll be asleep or in bed. So that's part of the routine. The other routine part of the nightly routine is I pack everything up the night before. And so when I wake up and the next day and I get ready for school, I just grab my bag and I leave. So that takes a lot of thinking into like, okay, what do I need today? What do I need to bring? What's due? So I can pack all of that in the morning and then rush off to school. Because I did that in high school, and let me tell you, I more often than not forgot a homework assignment or something at home when I packed the morning of. And when I converted to packing the night before, I forgot things less, like way less. Like I would note everything that I needed for the next day, and I would pack everything in my bag, and then I would just leave, and like without any thought, any concern that I had forgotten something, I had everything. I was confident that I had everything I needed, including things that were due and such like. So that's the big part of my nightly routine. What else do you want me to say? There's the nightly routine. Is there another routine you want me to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like how are you able to, finish homework and, because obviously you have to go to lecture, you have to, maybe do internship work. I don't know when you have to do that, but internship work, your homework, your lectures, and everything else. How are you able to fit that into a day? Like, give us a rough estimation of how you're able to do that.
So good question. In university, a typical schedule of, let's say, 4 classes. I typically had 5 classes every single semester because, I graduated in 3 years instead of the typical 4. So I had to take more classes than the average student, which is a challenge in and of itself. So I'll talk about that. But a typical schedule for a college student is 4 courses per semester-ish. So usually that means like 2 classes a day every other day. So it's like 2 of your 4 classes on Monday and Wednesday, and then 2 of your 4 classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then like, let's say you have a lab that's on Friday, or like you have a different kind of course that goes, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Like that's a thing too. So unlike high school, or some high schools, I guess unlike our high school, we didn't have class, like all of our classes every single day, which helps. Like that really helps a lot, actually. And I know some high schools do this where they have like blocks where they have like, the odd classes on like Monday, Wednesdays, and then the even classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Or I guess, I guess that's a 4-day week, huh? I don't know how they fit Friday into that, but somehow that works. And I know some high schools have that system, and it's that system in university as well, which helps because you don't have every single class every single day. So you have, when you think about it, if you only have 2 classes a day, that's only, let's say, an upper bound of 4 hours that you're actually spending in class. That's actually quite a lot. In my class, or in my university, the lectures are 1 hour and 15 minutes long. So that's actually 2 hours and 30 minutes. But I'm going to say an upper bound of 4 hours. Let's say your lectures are 2 hours long. So an upper bound of 4 hours for 2 classes a day. That leaves actually a lot of time during the day to do homework, to study, to do everything that you need to do if you're diligent enough to like sit down and actually do them. So I had very little problem going to school for like 4 hours worth of lectures when I had like 5 and 6 classes in my schedule at a time. And I still had, if you really think about like 4 or 5 or 6 hours out of that, there are still many more hours in the day for me to get everything done. So it's just a matter of sitting down, getting that work done. And I just made sure part of it was thinking about like, oh, if I don't get enough sleep tomorrow, I'm going to be miserable. And that was pretty good motivation for me, at least, to get everything done so that I can get to bed at the right time.
Right. I think I definitely commend you for sticking to that sleep schedule because I think sleep is kind of underrated, especially in university. People like to brag about how I only got 3 hours of sleep or I only got 6 hours of sleep last night. But it's definitely good to have a sleep schedule and stick to it because I think that's one of the most vital pillars of energy, right? Because that's how you recharge, that's how you energize yourself.
For the record, actually, sorry, I want to interrupt. For the record, the lack of sleep or sleep deprivation is not something to brag about. I don't know who decided that was a good idea. I don't know who decided, I don't know which YouTube influencer out there said that sleep deprivation was something that you can brag about and is like cool, but it's not. And it makes you feel miserable. It leads to burnout. It's terrible for your health. And it's a terrible habit to build, especially when you're so young and you're so impressionable. So get your sleep, get 6-7 hours minimum of sleep, and you're going to love yourself. You're going to feel good. And I did it. And I think I've mentioned this in a previous episode somewhere that I don't remember an instance where I stayed up all night for something because I really, really valued sleep and I stuck to it. And I got through university just fine. I graduated at the top of my class and I have a job now. I'm employed and I'm getting a master's degree. I'm fine. I got everything done. And granted, I went to a state school, but I also took like way more classes than the average college student. So I did it. You can do it too. Again, the lack of sleep or sleep deprivation is not something to brag about. I just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, I don't know why it's such a thing, especially in college. In high school, it was kind of a thing too, but especially in college, students love bragging about their lack of sleep because I think they associate it with hard work, right? We tend to associate like, oh, the reason why I'm not getting enough sleep is because I'm just working like 16 hours a day, and then I just don't have enough time to sleep, so I gotta cut into that sleep time in order to make room for my work, which most of the time isn't really true. It's like to make room for your procrastination, for who knows what, right? But usually you're not going to be able to be productive for that long. I think you can correct me on this, Julian, if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure at a certain point you start getting less productive as you start working so much.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And to go back to your immediately previous point, ironically, like you said, people think it's like cool to people like to brag that they got very little sleep because a sign of hard work. Ironically, people envied my sleep schedule. And I was like, okay, guys, it's not that hard. You just do your stuff and then you go to bed on the right time and then you wake up all refreshed. And so like my friends and my peers saw that I was a hard worker, but they also envied my ability to stick to a sleep schedule. And so if you really want bragging rights, if you really truly want bragging rights, I got 8 hours of sleep yesterday. You're the cool kid. Immediately, you're the cool kid because you got 8 hours of sleep. Everybody else thinks it's cool to get 2 hours of sleep, or like, I didn't sleep last night. That's a lie. That's a lie. They're going to say, holy cow, you got 8 hours of sleep. How did you do it? Then you're the cool kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's not just with sleep. There's a lot of other vital activities that you kind of do need to really pay attention to that you cannot compromise. Emphasize that, cannot compromise. Because once you start compromising that stuff, it's over, right? Like you decided, oh, I did it once, I'm going to do it again, I'm going to keep doing it. And then that becomes your new routine, right? So skipping lecture, right? Some people, they skip one lecture and they're like, oh, that was okay. I skipped lecture and I was still able to catch up. So they do it again and again and again. And then I know someone who has literally skipped lecture since I think the first or second week of school. And now he doesn't know what in the world he's doing. And that's really bad, right? Because at the beginning you think it's okay, but then you get into a really bad habit. So vital activities like lecture, for some people exercise. I know a girl who exercises pretty much every morning. And that helps her to, stay relaxed and to stay fit. And I think that's something that she would never compromise, because that's kind of what keeps her energy really high in the morning and allows her to go to class and, be a lot more fresh than the people who literally just got out of bed and ran to class. And that's something that you shouldn't compromise either if that's really important to you.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. I mean, I'm employed now, but I mean, ever since moving to LA, here's the thing about LA. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. The thing about LA is that everybody here is hot. Like you know that, right? Like like all the influencers are here, all the stars are here, all the celebrities are here. Everybody here is hot, and that really can really motivate you to like exercise. That's one thing. But the other thing, the other intrinsic value that I guess is more important than looking good is that, ironically, exercising gives you more energy. I can't explain the science behind it. I know I've read the science behind it, but I've definitely felt the benefits of exercising regularly, and I totally feel more energized after going into like a regular exercising like regimen. I mean, I can't tell you how much the degree to which I feel more energized than before after sticking to like regular exercise. It's weird. You feel tired in the moment, of course. Any, good workout is going to make you feel tired, but that's only in the moment. In the long run, I just feel so much more energized, and it's great.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess some ways to make sure that you don't compromise your schedule and stick to your activities is to find someone to hold you accountable. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Julian, but I definitely have. Whenever I've done activities and there's someone that does it with me. So let's say like a friend, maybe a little group. It's always encouraged me to do it too, because sometimes I'll be like, oh, I don't want to study today, but then I'll have a small group of friends that I always study with, and they're like, oh, we're studying like here, like at this time, you should come through. And I feel very obligated to go. And so that keeps me on track. I know a lot of people have very good self-discipline and they can just kind of do it on their own. Like, I'm just going to study today. Like, I'm not going to compromise that. But, for me and for a lot of other people, that can be difficult. So, having someone or having a small group to hold you accountable is definitely really, really great.
Yeah, and there are different ways to do that too. There are different, everybody has their source of motivation. For me, just to hark on your accountability point, I had the connotation of being like the know-it-all in a good way. Like in my friend group, people always seem to come to me to ask for like, oh, did you understand this topic? Or like, did you have a chance to like look at this? Like, I don't really understand this. Could you teach me, or could you talk to me about it? And knowing that my friends would most likely come to me to ask highly technical, highly theoretical topics, motivated me to make sure that I was studying, I was reading, and I was paying attention so that I would be able to answer those questions when my friends ask me, at risk of like looking like an idiot or like no longer keeping up the know-it-all reputation that I had garnered for myself. And it didn't help that I also was interning at NASA, and like there's a I don't want to call it a connotation more than it is like a stereotype that all NASA employees are like geniuses. So that didn't help the impression or the reputation at all. People just seemed to come to me more after realizing that I also worked at NASA. And so I had to keep up that, not because I wanted to, I guess I still wanted to be the know-it-all in a sense, but also because I couldn't let myself, I couldn't let myself not be able to help other people, like somebody
Right.
would be asking for my help, and obviously I'm going to do everything I can to help that person because these topics are hard. And I find it hard too. It's not that like everything comes easily to me, but I just work extra hard to make sure that I understand those topics so that I can talk intelligently about it and be able to explain it to my peers. And that was really important to me because, I mean, obviously, I started an organization literally dedicated to student success. I care about other students and I care about students being successful in their courses. So I always want to help students. And so I studied extra hard and I worked extra hard so that I can help other students and be able to explain highly theoretical topics to them in a simpler way so that they can understand it. So that's always been something that I valued in my life. And that is what kept me accountable and motivated as I got through my university education.
Yeah, right, definitely. And I guess another way that you can kind of stick to a routine, have something that holds you accountable, is actually UniPlan, which is the app that we're developing right now. So there's actually a feature that's specifically tailored to help you keep track of your energy levels and make sure that you can form a routine that will work best for you. So Julian, if you could talk a little bit more about that specific feature of the app.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked at length about this feature in a previous episode, or I guess in several other episodes. But basically, we give you the mechanism by which to track how you feel. You know, you can interpret it as like your mood or like your energy level, like on a scale of 1 to 10. How energized do you feel? And we ask this question, like, I guess every single hour. And that gives us a pretty good overview of the natural ebbs and flows of your energy. And it turns out that your energy flows are pretty regular. Like they sort of converge to a pattern. Like it sort of highlights whether or not you're more of a morning person or, a night owl or somewhere in the middle. And identifying your peaks in your energy, like let's say, so I'm a morning person. So my peak energy is more towards the morning. Knowing that is really, really helpful because then you can schedule your most important high priority tasks and obligations towards that time. So I like to, in my workplace, I like to get a lot of my important work, high priority work done in the morning. And then the rest of the day is dedicated to whatever else. During the period where I feel really, I guess tired or not quite as energized, lower on the 1 to 10 scale, I'll take a break or I'll go outside and I'll take a walk. Like every single day I go outside for a 30-minute walk. That's my lunch, by the way. I fast. So during lunch, quote unquote, I don't eat. I go out and I take a 30-minute walk. And as an introvert, that's really helpful, first of all, because I'm by myself in my own thoughts. And so that re-energizes me. 2, it's kind of a form of exercise. And so that really helps me as well. And 3, it's outdoors. So being outdoors is really helpful. I guess it's not really as helpful in the winter when weather is sort of all over the place. But getting in that 30 minutes of light exercise really helps clear up your mind. And tracking your energy levels allows you to identify a time where you can actually do that so you don't feel quite as low energy anymore. So that, I think, is one of the main differentiators between our app and other sort of planner or organizational apps out there, productivity apps that are out there. And what we're working on right now that is especially unique is that we, based off of your energy levels, the app will try to automatically schedule your high priority tasks towards your high energy level intervals. So that's something that's really, really cool. And I'm really, really excited about that. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to test it through our beta testing, which should go public sooner or later.
Right, definitely. Yeah, that's what really differentiates UniPlan from other apps. We care not just about you like having an app that you can organize on and plan out your day, but having an app that really, really helps you and is involved in your day, something that can help you keep track of your energy and make sure that you are on track to becoming a successful student. So I guess something else that I noticed that will help you in the long term to make life easier and to give you more energy is to get ahead when you can. I like to introduce a topic here that Julian introduced to me a while ago. And I think, I don't know what you called it, but I call it the four boxes system, where you split your activities or your tasks into four boxes and you categorize them by urgency and by importance, right? So the first box you'll have is the urgent and important box, and that's stuff that you got to knock out like right away. You have the second box, which is the urgent. I think it's not urgent, but very important box, and that's kind of stuff that's a little more long term. And I'll get back to that one in a second because it's really important. The third box is going to be the urgent, but not important stuff. And I think Julian, you said that you should give this stuff to other people because it's not really as important, but you do need to get it out of the way when you can.
Yeah. So here's the thing: is from a business perspective, you would delegate that.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you were own a business and you had something that was urgent, needed to be done, but not quite important to the growth of the business, you would delegate that. You would give that job to somebody else. From the student perspective, you would probably want to automate that. And the best thing about this is that technology is automating everything, right? So perfect example. Let's take UniPlan. Scheduling stuff, scheduling your day, the next day is an urgent thing. I guess you can argue that it's important, but it's urgent because you need to do it every single day. And it's something that can be automated, which we try to do, right? And so anything that is urgent needs to be done right away, but not quite as important to the growth of the business or your personal growth, your professional and educational academic growth. You should automate those things or try to get those things off of your back to somebody else if possible, but automate them or have some sort of quick, efficient system to get those things done so that you can move on to more important things.
Right, definitely. I mean, one of the things that for me would be urgent but not important is lab reports. So basically what happened was we'd have 3 hours of lab every Monday for me. And I'd go in, I'd learn about the lab, I'd do everything. But then after that, we had to write like a little report, basically detailing like what we did and, the numbers we got and what we thought about our results. And that wasn't as important, right? Because I already kind of learned everything in the lab. So I didn't consider it important since, it was something that was more less about understanding, less about learning, and more just about getting it done. And so I'd probably put my lab reports always in urgent, but not really important. And the way I got through those really quickly was I kind of set up the same template for every single lab report. And it worked. I got pretty much like above average scores for every single one of my lab reports just using the same exact template like every time. And that's a way that you can kind of, I guess not automate like you said, but make it more efficient, right? Because it's just not a lot of thinking involved and you already did the thinking in the lab. You can just go ahead and, copy and paste the new stuff that you have from your spreadsheets and stuff like that. And then the fourth box, which I like to call the procrastination box, is not urgent, not important. This is stuff like, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever pops up on your phone. It's not urgent, it's not important, but for some reason you feel the need to respond to it anyway. And this is the box that causes the people, I'd say, the most problems, because it's just a grand waste of time because it doesn't need to be done quickly. It's not important to your personal growth at all, but we all manage to somehow find a way to spend a lot of time in that box. And I guess going back to the second box here, this is the one that's really crucial and really important in helping you maintain high energy, is the box that is important but not urgent. This is long-term stuff, right? This is stuff that, it's not going to be due right away, but it's really important to you as a student. Think of it as an investment, right? It's stuff that in the moment doesn't seem like it needs to be done, but in the long term will help you so much. And that's the kind of stuff that you should be focused on when you can, right? I think that's when you have a little bit of free time, you should get that stuff out of the way because in the long run, it'll make you so much more efficient. Julian, I don't know what you would put in that box, but can you give us a few ideas of like things that are really important to you, but you wouldn't really consider urgent?
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, UniPlan is a very long-term project, but it has some activities that are important and urgent. So that big project has many tasks that can be divided up into basically all four of those boxes. But to give a concrete example, something that is important but not immediately urgent is my education, right? My graduate education. It's important to me because I always like to learn. I always like to grow. I always like to feel like I'm making progress or I'm growing, I'm developing myself. It's not urgent because I'm working right now, and also school hasn't started for me. It won't start until January. And so I can just label that and I'll plan on it later on. I usually, what I do with items in that box is I plan to do them. Like I schedule them, at a later date and time, and then I'll get to it then. Yeah, I mean, concrete example is grad school for me.
Right. Yeah. I think for me, one of the examples is actually something called LaTeX. I think a lot of people use this in university to write research papers, resumes, etc. It's a really great. I think it's a markup language. Is that right?
You can call it that.
Yeah. So basically, that it's used to format all sorts of documents, and it's not really something that's super urgent to me because I don't need to learn it right away. But I know that in the future, I probably will need to use it because I've seen a lot of juniors and seniors write, really long reports with that and format the resumes with that. And that's something that is super important to me and to my career, to my personal growth. But as of right now is not really important. I mean, not really urgent, but it is important to me in the future. And so that kind of stuff is what you want to get out of the way when you do have free time, because that'll just make life so much easier for you in the future. So you won't have to, when you do have to actually use like me, LaTeX, you won't have to stay up all night learning how to use it. You would have already practiced. You would have already known, I guess language. Yeah, you would have already known how to familiarize yourself with it. So it makes things a lot easier in the long term. I guess the last point here to make life easier with long-term solutions is to find a way to balance everything. We've already made an episode on balancing things, but balancing and keeping your energy levels high are really, really important. Would you agree, Julian?
Oh yeah. I mean, balance is hard to find, and I know there are a lot of productivity gurus out there who will argue that balance is impossible and it doesn't exist. But I would like to believe that there is a balance. It's just not what you think, where everything is even. Like that's equalized. That's not necessarily balanced, right? Because different things can carry different weights. Like some things are more important to you than other things, and so to dedicate more time into the things that are more valuable to you can create more balance for you, right? So balance is a term that I think needs to be defined in a more concrete way. But yeah, I totally agree. Balance is something that is important, and you should seek it.
Right, and I think there's one point that I want to note. And that's sometimes you'll try to really optimize your schedule. You plan out your sleep, you'll plan out all the homework you need to do, you'll plan out everything. But then you realize, like, even when you do everything perfectly that day, everything that you set out to do, you might not be getting enough sleep. You might not be getting enough time to do your homework, and that causes a lot of problems. And I think in that case, which sometimes can be rare, but I experienced it my sophomore year, you do have to sacrifice, because I think that sometimes we make mistakes in biting off way more than we can chew. I mean, there are sometimes, things get hard, but they're still manageable, right? You can still get your hours of sleep. You just need to focus more and procrastinate less. But sometimes it's just not physically possible, right? Because what happened to me was I had to go to school every day, and then I'd practice tennis for, 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes. Sometimes I have a game, and that take, even 5 hours, just getting back and forth, and then playing the game itself. And then I get home and I have all this homework to do because I was taking, I believe, 7 classes at the time, which is ridiculous for a sophomore. And so I had to finish all of that. And sometimes I have to pull all-nighters, and that's just the reality of it. Obviously, there was some procrastination involved because it's impossible to minimize that. But I was really working hard that year. And I was also, I believe, in like two or three really demanding clubs, one of which was STEM. And it just took up so much of my time that I couldn't possibly find another way around it. So what I had to do was I had to decide, okay, I'm going to quit tennis. I'm going to quit the other clubs that don't really matter to me as much. And it was a really difficult decision, but it was something that had to be done. And after that, I was really, really able to manage my time. In junior and senior year, I had so much more time to focus on myself, to get all my work done, to really understand what I was learning, and I guess to keep a high energy, because now I wasn't falling asleep in class anymore like I was in sophomore year. And it was just a lot easier on me. And sometimes you have to realize, you have to just be able to distinguish when you're doing a lot and you're just procrastinating, or when you're just doing way too much and there's no possible way for you to optimize your schedule anymore. So I guess a lesson to learn from that is that sometimes you have to give up things you like for things that you love. And even more common, I think, is sometimes you have to give up things you love for things that you love even more. Maybe you love your sport and you love the clubs that you're in and you love the stuff that you're learning, but you have to be willing to ultimately make that sacrifice. And that's the difference sometimes, between you having low energy levels every day and you having high energy levels. Makes a really big difference.
I think another thing to think about when sort of gauging whether or not you should sacrifice something for the good of something that perhaps is more important to you is thinking about how, just first of all, that whole statement that I just said, thinking about how important is one thing in your life, what is valuable to you, and relative to another thing in your life. I have so many projects that I would like to do, that I would like to undertake to help students, but there's no way that I can do them all. And so I've chosen to not dedicate a great deal of time working on those, and instead working on Uniplan and working in general, like in my job, because I'd like to, build up an income so that I can support myself and my lifestyle. But another thing to think is perhaps more important is that when you think about all of the things that you'd like to do or that you are currently doing, think about how much time and effort you're putting into all of these things individually, right? If you have 10 things going on at the same time, you're going to be stretched so thin that you cannot in any way make meaningful progress on any of those things. But if you instead work on a select few of those things, say like a subset of like 3 or 4 or even 5, like half, then you have so much more time and energy, and then you'll be able to make great, meaningful, productive contributions and progress towards those 3, 4, or 5 out of 10 things that you'd like to do. And I think that's way more valuable than not having finished anything at all, even though you're involved in 10 activities.
Right, that's definitely the way I was feeling in sophomore year. I definitely struggled that year because I wasn't really doing anything meaningful in any of my clubs and any of my activities, because I was mediocre in everything, right? I wasn't amazing at one thing, and I wasn't finding the value from everything, because I'm like, okay, I got to get up and I got to do all this stuff, and oh, what am I getting out of it? I don't really know, right? It's just something that I'm doing right now, and I don't have any purpose to do it. So when you really narrow down your activities and say, what do I love about this? That's really what's going to make your day, right? That's what's going to make your life a lot easier, because you'll be able to wake up every day and find that motivation and say, oh, this is what I'm doing today and this is why it's important, right? Because sometimes when you're overcrowded with stuff to do, it's just very, very difficult to manage. And it's very difficult, as you said, Julian, to find any meaning in that, to make any meaningful strides. Okay, one last thing to note before we end this podcast is burnout. At first, I'd like to ask your opinion on burnout, Julian. Do you think it's a real thing? And if so, I guess, how would you deal with the feeling of burning out?
I know it's a real thing because I've experienced it. And also it's kind of a big deal in my field in software engineering. Burnout is something that is prevalent in my field. And so, I mean, this is an appropriate question for me, I guess. So it's real. It's something that creeps up on you. And, you know, a lot of people might think that it's a resilience thing. It's an endurance thing. It's a stamina thing where it's a measure of how much you can put up with. And if you can't put up as much as other people, then you're just bad, right? And the people who can put up with more stuff, more crap, more work to do, then they're just better. And that's not necessarily true. My opinion about burnout is that it is definitely a real thing. It is a big problem. And guess what? It's a result of not taking care of oneself via sleep, exercise, diet, values and goals, and making certain that you're doing things that are valuable, personally valuable to you, right? Feeling fulfilled in the work that you do has a great deal to do, in my opinion, with how fast you burn out. If you're doing something that you don't like, you're gonna burn out faster. If you're doing something that you do like, then and you enjoy it, you derive some fun and excitement out of it, then you're gonna burn out less. But you're still going to burn out if you push yourself too far. And another layer to this opinion is that self-care is seen as selfish. And I don't think that's true at all. I think taking care of yourself, rewarding yourself for your successes and taking care of your mind and your body are not selfish. In fact, they're important to the people that you care about because it keeps you healthy, it keeps you sane, you grow, you develop yourself professionally and personally, and everybody is all the better for it. But you can't get there without first taking care of yourself. It's totally fine. I'm not telling you to live for yourself forever and never care for other people. But sometimes we have to take care of ourselves before we're able to take care of another person. And I don't know if for the people who are frequent flyers out there, they always tell you in the event of an emergency, put on your own mask, your own breathing mask.
Oxygen mask, I believe.
Oxygen mask. That's the word I was looking for. I was like, what the hell was that word? Oxygen mask. Put on your own oxygen mask before you help somebody else do it, because it does nobody anything. It doesn't help anybody where you die trying to help somebody else, and then in dying, you unsuccessfully help that other individual. If you help yourself first, you keep yourself alive, and then you can help other people stay alive as well. Okay? So that's the important thing. That's the important takeaway. Take care of yourself, and then you'll be able to take care of other people. If you take care of yourself, you'll burn out a lot less and a lot less frequently, and you'll also recover from burnout if you're currently there.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I think burnout is a real thing. I've definitely experienced it a few times myself. And I think burnout, yeah, it's a result of, in my opinion, doing too much and putting too much stress on yourself without taking care of yourself. Because if you don't give yourself that time to relax, to, actually reflect on what you're doing, you're definitely going to burn out because you'll lose purpose. I think that's what burnout really is. It's a loss of purpose. It's a temporary loss of purpose a lot of the times, because even though you might really like that thing, just doing it so much, involving yourself in it so much without realizing why you're doing it, or without giving yourself some breathing room in between, that can be suffocating. That I guess that can cause you to fall into a state of self-pity, right? You feel just so bad for yourself, like, why am I doing this to myself? Why am I spending so much time doing this and doing this? And it's very important sometimes just take a little step back. We're not telling yourself to pull yourselves out of it and saying, I can't take it anymore, right? But just pulling yourself back a little bit and saying, okay, I'm just going to take a little rest, and this is where I'm going to go from here. Maybe I need to change something. Maybe I need to adjust, and maybe this will make it easier for me going back into the activity to make yourself a lot more productive, to keep your energy levels high, and to, most importantly, keep yourself happy, I guess, keep yourself fulfilled. So before we end this episode, I do want to mention UniPlan once again. We mentioned earlier at length about how there's an energy feature and how it will keep you energized. It'll make a daily routine for you that you will find helpful. But I guess, Julian, can you talk a little bit more about the other features of the app? What can university students use it for, and how you think it'll help them?
Sure. So, I mean, aside from that really, really great feature that I talked about earlier, you take that away, and it's basically a to-do list system that is tailored towards university students. You can add in homework assignments or exams. You can calculate your grades. So if you're the kind of student like me, and probably like you, David, who likes to calculate the least amount of effort to maintain a certain grade, that you could do that with this app too. So let's say a professor has a project coming up and you currently have an A, but you're feeling really tired, let's say burnt out. You want to calculate the lowest grade you can get on the project in order to maintain an A. Well, you can add in that project as a grade in the app, and you can add in like a fake, grade, like a temporary grade, to calculate a grade in the future. And let's say you only need a C on the project to get an A. Well, now you know that, and now you know not to put in a great deal of effort into this project. Just get a C and you'll be fine. You'll still have an A. And you can go through university smooth sailing, which is something that I did do quite a lot in university. That's one other thing. You track your homework, track your studying habits, track your exams, track your whole progress as a university or college student. It's a perfect system built by students for students.
Right, definitely. I think the app is very useful. I'm really looking forward to using it myself as a university student. And the app is what directly supports our podcast. It directly supports our blog, all of our web content. And so with your guys' help and with your guys' support, we are able to release this free informational content that will hopefully help students like you who are currently in university or maybe even high school. But aside from that, we also have social medias out there. So we have a Facebook, I believe. We have a Twitter, a YouTube, and then obviously you can listen to this podcast from Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes, and our website directly. I don't know if I'm missing anything.
I think you got all
definitely, yeah, definitely feel free to follow us. We're usually under the tag at UniPlan Team, I believe, and you can go support us on there, and make sure that when the time comes to sign up for our beta test, that's going to be released really soon, and we're really looking forward to having a small group of you guys test out the app, tell us how you're feeling about it, and give us any feedback that you have.
Yeah, and the great thing about your feedback is that you have the potential to tailor the app to you, to better suit your needs. So if there is something that's like gravely missing and we just hadn't thought of it yet, but it's like something that's super important to you, tell us and we will work to build that into the system. If something that we've created for you just isn't really connecting, it isn't resonating with you, or it just doesn't work, tell us, we'll fix it. We'll even take it out. We'll even rebuild the entire app from scratch if the entire thing is a disaster. Like, give us that feedback, because we are dedicated to your success as a student. So anything that we can do to help with that, we can. Just tell us and we'll do it.
That'll be it for this episode of the Study Space podcast. Make sure to tune in next time and make sure to support us. Bye.